Dirty Birds, what's up? And welcome to another edition of Falcons Final Whistle presented by Zaxby's. I'm your host, Will McFadden, joined by Tori McElhaney and Terrin Waack, and we're here to break down the Atlanta Falcons against the Denver Broncos. This is a different opponent than the Falcons usually see. We got an AFC opponent. They're out there, not fully on the West Coast, but in the mountain area. Have you guys ever been to Denver before?
I have not. I've been in the Denver airport.
I have also been in the Denver airport, but never actually the state of Colorado.
I think it was a layover from Wisconsin to New Orleans. So make that make sense. Think Southwest, I believe. But yeah, all I remember about the airport is I could not find any food, and your girl was famished.
We had a layover there. I've ran through the Denver airport, like full-on 40-time sprint on our way back from Montana when we shot the Troy Anderson documentary, and we had a layover in Denver. I definitely almost took some people out, like on the.
Yeah, I hear Denver's airport has a good run defense too.
Apparently,
so it's impressive.
Not good enough to stop me, apparently.
Yeah,
but I still got there with plenty of time.
That's a shame, Terrin, that you weren't able to find any food. Denver has I don't think surprisingly, I do think their food scene is pretty well known.
The breweries, I think, are where it's at.
Breweries are great.
Yeah.
They have great pizza too.
Taryn, I feel like this would actually be your place. Yeah. Knowing how much you love a good brewery, I'm like, Taryn actually should.
How many over under 10? How many times am I going to be like, I could move here?
No,
Probably a lot.
I feel the need to say this every single time we go anywhere. I usually get a text from Taryn within the first hour of us being there saying, I could move here. She's very adamant about.
I'm a one drink I could move here kind of girl.
100%. So I guarantee you, I don't think
vibes,
I really don't think it's going to even take an hour until we're going to land in Denver and you're going to be like, I feel it in my spirit.
Casually misses the plane.
Yeah, you need to be a big weekend getaway person. Are you?
Yes.
She definitely is.
There you go. Just fall in love with every new city.
Home is when there's a home game.
I love that. So the Falcons have been really good away from home so far this year. Outside of last week. They're 3-1 now after that loss to New Orleans, but they're looking to get their fourth win away from the confines of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. To do that, though, they're going to have to beat a very good defense.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at this matchup, I really think that that's where we should start. You know, Denver has the second most sacks in the league. They have 35 on the season, behind only the New York Giants. They're first in yards per play allowed, allowing just 4.7. And they are fourth in points per game allowed, allowing 17.7. So, Tori, when we start talking about this game, probably want to start up front and work our way back, right? So Denver's pass rush, what are you seeing from them?
Oh, they're so good. They're really good, and they're good with just kind of sending the four guys that they have up there. You know, they aren't really, I say this, I've not watched every single game that the Broncos have played.
You haven't? Karen and I have watched every single snap.
I know.
My nighttime routine.
Yeah. We often text each other about it.
I don't believe y'all for a second. But I will say what they're able to do up front is very special because it's very vanilla in a certain sense. They're not doing anything super elaborate to put pressure on a quarterback. It's just guys are just winning up front more than they're losing. And I do think that this is one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenge that this Falcons offensive line particularly is going to face this year. I go back to what the first couple of weeks of the season were against the Steelers. That defensive front, we know, gosh, even now looking back, nothing's changed. They're still a really good defensive front.
Yep.
And then you talk about going up to Philly, and I know, Will, you and I were talking about this. Gosh, this may have been Monday afternoon, and we were talking about how this could really be a low-scoring, just brawl, just because you know how Denver's defense wants to play this thing. You know how good they are and how good they've been. I think the Falcons have scored at least 26 points in a game 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. Denver has not really allowed more than that in, I would say, a majority of their games. So, again, I'm kind of expecting this to be whoever has the ball last and has the ball kind of bounce their way in the fourth quarter is how this game could go.
Oh, goody.
I know.
It's the game.
I know.
Oh, goody.
When you talk about kind of the dudes that they just have up front, you're totally not wrong, right? And it's not, they're going to crowd the line of scrimmage. Vance Joseph, their defensive coordinator, is going to present some of the looks that Steve Spagnuolo presents, that Todd Bowles, that even here in Atlanta with Jimmy Lake and Raheem Morris, where you will get linebackers walked up on the line of scrimmage, you're going to see 7, maybe 8 guys right there. But some will drop off, some are going to come, and more often than not, it's just their main 4 guys.
Right.
But I was doing a little research on this. They have their main 4 pass rushers. They're starting 4. Each has more pressures than Caden Ellis on this team, who is the leading pressure getter for Atlanta's defense. So,
pressure getter.
Yeah,
I love it.
I was trying to think of the right way to phrase that. I'm happy with pressure getter. I've said way worse things.
Caden pressure getter.
No. Caden pressure getter. Braden
PG.
catching. All right, we are going downhill.
Ayo.
But Zach Allen, who was actually on the injury report, is limited on Wednesday. He leads the team with 42 quarterback pressures, which is tied for 8th in the NFL. Then you've got Nick Bonito, who is essentially their TJ Watt, right? Few are TJ Watt, but he is, for all intents and purposes, kind of their main edge rusher guy. He's got 32 quarterback pressures. Jonathan Cooper, another outside linebacker, he's got 32 quarterback pressures. And then John Franklin Myers has 22 quarterback pressures. Caden Ellis has 20, to put that in perspective. So when we are looking at how their defense wants to get after teams, it really does start up front. And then you can drop a bunch of guys behind them because you can get pressure with your front 4. So, Terrin, as you're looking at kind of this game and maybe how Atlanta should attack this style of defense, Tori brought up kind of the first few opponents that Atlanta played. We can maybe look back at what they did as a form of attack, but I think Atlanta's offense has found a second gear since then.
For sure.
So how would you go about this?
The first in yards per play allowed stuck out to me most with 4.7 for the Broncos defense. And it doesn't necessarily stand out to me in a be scared kind of way. It's more so use that to your advantage, because if you just have 4 yards per play, that's 3 and you get a first down. Math. 3 times 3 is 9. No, you don't get a first down. Uh-oh.
Well, it's 4.7.
4. I said 4. Okay. Yeah. 4 times 3 is 12.
That's 14.1 yards per 3 plays.
My own calculator just malfunctioned in my head.
I'm your calculator now.
Oh, gosh. But point is that if the Falcons are able to do these short passes that they've proven that they're able to do to people like Drake London, Ray McLeod, Bijan Robinson. I mean, you can throw Tyler Algier there if you want to. And Kyle Pitts. It's just be productive with them. You don't need these big plays. You don't need to air it out like you have been this season. That if you just can move the ball consistently, who cares if it's 4 yards at a time?
Yeah.
And then with that said, that also goes with running the ball. It doesn't have to be pass, 4. Run, pass. They don't have to be these massive plays. And I think that's the way they're going to be able to move the ball against this defense that has proven they can limit plays so much. So, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Here's the thing is this offense, I think we have seen that if it's moving forward, if it's picking up 3-4 yards a carry, or if they're moving forward, if they don't have these negative plays, tackles for a loss, sacks, penalties, they usually can stay on schedule. It's when those things happen, these kind of shoot yourself in the foot type of moments, that they get off schedule and they get disjointed. And I think we saw that against the Saints. We've seen that against Seattle. You saw that early against Pittsburgh. When they're not kind of just moving the sticks even a little bit, it kind of frazzles the drive itself. So I think for them, it's keeping the foot on the gas to the extent of just we're only going forward. I know they love to run the little screen outs and everything like that, and that's fine. But this is a defense that is quick. They're athletic. They're aggressive. They're gonna run to the ball. They're gonna tackle well. It's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be a very hard fought game offensively.
Yeah.
And again, another thing too is when you're finish drives. That has been a huge talking point of this team this week. Finish drives. I don't think you're going to have very many opportunities to punch the ball in. So you have to, if you only have 2 or 3 opportunities to punch the ball in, you've got to punch the ball into the end zone, because I do think that the way Denver's offense is operating right now, they're going to get their plays. They're going to get their moments. I think they're going to punch it in. So you have to answer with 6 and not 3.
You can't hesitate either. Kirk Cousins needs to get the ball out quickly. He needs to either hand it off or pass it really fast, because otherwise, like Tori said, since this defense is so fast, you're going to be pushed backwards rather than be moving forward. And at this point, Kirk has been sacked at least twice in the last 4 games. So you kind of want that to end here so you don't get behind the chains, only in front.
Yeah. I will say, too, that Kirk's been better, maybe not this past game, but Kirk's been better in the last probably like month and a half when compared to the first 4 games of the season of like being able to convert under pressure. I think he's been handling pressure very, very well as he's settled into this offense and understanding kind of his progressions and trusting his receivers and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like what version of Kirk Cousins we see in Denver this weekend.
Yeah, I think everything that you guys said about staying on schedule, this is a game where you feel like any of those mistakes, penalties, missed plays, things like that are going to, be just kind of almost that much more important because of how much it's just going to stink to move the ball against Denver regardless, right? A 2nd and 7 is tough enough. A 2nd and 14 feels almost impossible.
Right, you're not helping yourself out.
Let's not get cute. Basic ball, move forward.
Terrin's like, just hand it to Tyler and Bijan every time.
Yeah.
Little dunk pass to Drake here, a little dunk pass to Kyle there. Like, just
she's like, we don't want flash, we want sustenance. Wait, no, substance.
Substance.
And
sustenance.
I think what you said, Terrin, about the quickness, right, of getting the ball, it doesn't necessarily mean a short passing game. It just needs to be an intentional passing game. This may not be, when you look at the yards per attempt, the air yards per attempt against New Orleans, the highest marks of the season. So I had a few people in the mailbag kind of say, Kirk is holding the ball on for too long, like the sacks against New Orleans, that worries me. I think it's going to be a very different game plan.
For sure.
I think when you saw Atlanta, they wanted to attack New Orleans down the field. And if you look at the explosive play rates that New Orleans defense has given up this season, they're one of the worst in the league at limiting teams from really hitting those big plays. Denver is on the other side of the spectrum. They kind of play more like Atlanta does, and they're going to take away those deep shots, force everything underneath. And so you're going to have to play a little bit more of a patient game, I think. And
patient but fast.
Right. You're going to have to be getting the ball out, but almost willing to take a while to get down the field.
Yes.
I don't think this is going to be a game where you're carving out 40-yard plays really quickly. I think it's going to be, like you said, 4 yards, 6 yards, 2 yards, 8 yards. Like, it's not going to happen all at once. And I do think that's an advantage of having Kirk Cousins here, is that he is probably at this age and this stage of his career more willing to say, okay, thank you, I'll take this, and we'll just get a new set of downs and live to fight another day. So when you look at Kirk against pass rushers, or 4 or fewer pass rushers, and again, talking about how Denver likes to rush 4 and they're effective at it, he's 3rd in the NFL, though, in passing yards and completion percentage over expectation against 4 or fewer rushers. So this can be a little bit of a strength-on-strength matchup, and that's where I do think it comes down to Zach Robinson, the offensive game planning, having a really good idea in place of what you want to do and how you can be successful. So,
and I'll say this: none of it. Sorry, I can't.
Tori coming in.
Oh my gosh!
I will say
jump
this,
scare.
None of it freaking matters if you're not scoring touchdowns. And I truly don't. We're talking about kind of having this patient approach and potentially putting together double-digit play drives that are going to span 5 or 6 minutes of clock. You know that the Broncos on the other side are going to want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And this Falcons defense has been willing to let offenses play that game and shrink the field in the red zone and then make a stand in the red zone. That's been their game plan since day one.
Yep.
What you can't get into is what we saw in the fourth quarter against New Orleans, where you are putting these drives together. You're getting going. You have over 400 yards of total offense.
And then you don't score.
Right. It doesn't matter if you're not scoring.
Right.
And that is where it even goes back to the point that you were making very early in the season about like time of possession and this conversation about like, well, if you're scoring points, time of possession really doesn't matter. And I agree that this is kind of the flip side of that.
Yeah.
Like without
yards don't matter if you're not scoring points.
100%. So I just wanted to add that. Sorry I came on strong. I'm very it's been a minute since I've been in the podcast studio. I missed this. So
How many coffees have you had?
This is only my second, but there's 3 shots in here. So
3 shots of
espresso.
Sorry,
not. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I was like, that explains a little bit more. Okay.
Where can I get some?
Right,
Just kidding. But like the Falcons can't do what you're doing with your coffee. Like, don't just overload it too quickly is what we're saying too. Like, make sure you're being efficient, score the touchdowns, finish the race. Be the tortoise, not the hare.
Oh, God.
Be the tortoise that finishes the race.
I love that.
It's been brewing in my brain.
She's like, I wanted that.
Brewing in your brain while Tori's coffee was brewing in her pot.
Yes.
Tori, though, which matchup in this game, looking from Atlanta's offense perspective, is more important to you? Drake London against Patrick Surtain or Nick Bonito against Jake Matthews?
Nick Bonito against Jake Matthews.
Why?
I do think that the thing about it with like defensive backs and receivers, I think there are a lot of times where the matchups, like in a game, you have moments where each guy wins. And for better or for worse, each guy wins. But there are certain times when a tackle and an edge rusher, there is sometimes just an overpowering that happens. And I think that if we get into the position of Nick Bonito is overpowering Jake Matthews over and over and over again, that's going to affect what Drake London can do. That's going to affect what Kirk Cousins can do in getting the ball out to his playmakers and running the ball. And I mean, everything. So that to me is the linchpin in this, is that matchup specifically. And if Jake Matthews is having to be on an island with Nick Bonito, like, it's gonna be tough. Sorry.
It's a visual.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I just am a very visual person.
Right, yeah. So I do that to me is the biggest to the point earlier. You can't do anything if Nick Bonito is just taking control of this offensive line.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Don't leave Jake Matthews on Exile Island with
No.
Nick Bonito is the takeaway here.
Don't do that.
But you're right, because, that's why a game wrecker is called a game wrecker for a reason. They're not just going to, like, wreck the matchup. They wreck the whole game through the matchup.
Exactly.
It's a
And-
domino effect.
Exactly. And so I think there was like a series against Kansas City where Denver literally sacked Patrick Mahomes like 3 plays in a row.
Yeah.
And that is what this defense is capable of doing. So, when you're talking about staying on schedule, when you're talking about putting up points, like any one stretch where their defense can just be like, get off the field, Atlanta's offense, that is going to be very impactful, especially in a low-scoring game. And part of the reason it could be low-scoring is when you look on the other side of the ball and you look at Denver's offense. Today's episode of Falcons Final Whistle is brought to you by Zaxby's. And after a long game, when I'm tired and I need to refuel, I turn to Zaxby's. Their marinated, hand-breaded, fried to perfection chicken fingers, they hit the spot every time. Get yours with seasoned crinkle fries, a nice drink, and whichever of their 12 signature sauces you're feeling at the moment. But it always hits just right. So next time you need to refuel, go get yourself some Zaxby's. It has started coming along better recently, but you have Bo Nix there. He's a rookie quarterback. They've done a good job protecting him. So it's going to be a tricky, I think, affair for Atlanta's defense and how they want to pursue this matchup. But the main thing is you got to start faster than last week. And Raheem Morris all week long has kind of been pushing back against a flat start. It's more a flat series, I think he said. It was just kind of a couple of drives there early on that you want to have back. Of course, those explosive plays to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We have heard that Jimmy Lake has, changed things up a little bit in the defensive meeting to try to emphasize how you would start fast. Terrin, what's one thing you would do in your defensive meeting to get the point across that you need to start fast? How would you demonstrate that?
I like what Jimmy Lake is doing. Do we want me to ruin the surprise?
No. What would you do?
Okay, what would I do? Well, I'm going to rely on the stats. Are you kidding me? There have been 92 games this season where the team that scored first ultimately won. When it comes to the entire league, that's only a third. So, that's not enough in my mind. When it comes to the Falcons, 4 of their 6 wins have played out that way. That's 2/3. So, you know what I would do? I would cue up that touchdown drive, and then I'd show the celebration post-game. Cue up the touchdown drive, show the celebration. Cue up the... Okay, I'm not going to say all 4.
So we're doing a little
but
association
yeah,
game
you
here?
score on the first drive,
Like the
look what happens.
Yeah.
The Pavlovian effect with the dog.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got a little subliminal
This is what I would
messaging
do.
in,
Right, yeah.
in
Because
here.
then you're like, numbers, prove it, and then look at the visuals. It's both.
I love it.
What about you, Tori? What would you do?
So I feel like I'm a naturally competitive person, and I don't like people being better than me at anything. Even if it's just like playing Pictionary with my family, I still feel very strongly that I should be the best. And I feel very strongly that in order to make it to this level, you have to have that innate like competition gene in you and I would lean into that.
You're going to buy everybody competition jeans?
No.
No?
No.
I don't know if Levi's sells those.
No,
Okay.
I don't think they do. No,
That one was a rough one, Will.
Yeah, they're all rough. It's okay.
I personally would kind of do the opposite approach. Like,
All right, you know what? We're gonna run this defense for a week, and one week you get it,
Yeah.
1 week I get it, and we'll see who wins.
yeah, I don't know if there's a reason why I'm not a coach, and maybe this is the reason why. But like challenging these guys to the point of being like,
She's gonna be like, you suck.
no, I'm
Just taking the Bill Belichick approach.
just kind of being
what,
like,
what is this right here? Go on, this crap, guys.
No,
we can't do this.
That's literally me. But I truly do think that like I have such high expectations for this defense that I'm never going to be satisfied with them not playing to that expectation. And I would let them know that. Like,
She's gonna pull the I'm not mad.
I'm not
just
mad, I'm just disappointed because I know that y'all, can play better. I know that you can do better. I know that but that's a tough line to walk because you do have to understand, like, offensive guys are paid a lot of money to make a lot of plays too. But I just have a lot of confidence in this defense and how smart it is and kind of leaning into outsmart these guys because you can. It is where I would land.
What would your father do?
Oh, I actually don't know. I've never been in a locker room with him. That's a great question. I'll have to ask him. I imagine though that he is very here's what you did wrong, like very calculating, like here's what you did wrong, here's how you fix it, go do it.
So just like a normal team meeting.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
what do I fall under?
You just told us.
Yeah, yours is a
Yeah.
PowerPoint presentation.
You called his normal. What's mine?
Stat heavy.
Nerd alert.
No, I think actually it's crazy that you brought up the tortoise and the hare, because what I would do is I would just read that book, but just not the ending. And in my version, the hare wins. It's just like going away. The tortoise never comes back. You just start fast, and you play fast, and then you end fast.
You
And
just
then the hare
ruined
wins.
a lot of
You just
children's
ruined
lives.
the fable.
Yeah,
Like,
okay, but
the lesson is that
You just keep going.
as a parent, the lesson is whatever I make it. The book only finishes the way that it was written if I read it that way.
honestly true.
There's half the book left. What do you mean we're done reading this?
No. We're getting the revised version. We're getting some deleted chapters in
That's
my version of the
hilarious.
tortoise and the hare. So
The
that's
poor
what
tortoise.
all the grown men in the auditorium would just have to listen to me read the tortoise and the hare,
Right.
and then close it halfway and be like, and then the hare won in a landslide. Go do that. Go team.
Man.
All right.
I would have no motivation.
So let's talk about Bo Nix a little
Yeah.
bit. Tori, what are some of the challenges that Bo Nix would present here?
Oh my gosh, he's been pretty dang good recently. I think that the Bo Nix that you saw in the first probably 3-4 weeks of the season is not the same Bo Nix that you're seeing in the last 4 weeks of the season.
Absolutely
It
not.
feels like a tale of two different seasons almost for him, which I do think is indicative of rookie quarterbacks and the positions that they're put in. And we talk about Kirk Cousins, who's been in the league for 13 years, who it took him a while to get used to this offense and the playmakers and how the style that they wanted to play, how it would look on a game day. Bo Nix coming in as a rookie, having played in a bunch of different systems in college, but having to establish himself as the guy, I think that he is somebody who is seeing things very well right now, to the point of what we were saying earlier about how this defense, this Falcons defense, it gets smarter. This is something I wrote about on Monday, but I feel like this is a living, breathing entity, this defense, that their level of play rises as their play count does. Like, the more they see, the more they feel, the more the tendencies that they pick up on in a game, the better that they get. And I think the stats would prove that, their first half stats versus their second half stats.
Oh, I have his season stats.
Oh.
And they do prove it.
Okay, there we go. I'll take your word for it. But this defense is a living, breathing entity, and I think that Bo Nix has showed us that he is as well. I think he's getting better and more confident, more comfortable the more reps that he gets. And I know that he's somebody who, going back to what I was saying before too about how this game could mimic some of the earlier games in the season with also what Bo Nix can do as kind of a mobile guy and how he can extend plays. He has that ability. He's shown it time and time again.
And he's 5th in scramble yards this season among all quarterbacks.
So this game is going to be, for me, very indicative of what it was against Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Patrick Mahomes.
So do you try to pressure a quarterback like that more, or are you more let's play coverage and
because this Falcons team hasn't consistently been able to affect the quarterback, I'm willing to play a bit more safe.
Okay.
Because we're 11 games into the season, and I think we can only truly count maybe the Dallas game as a game that I felt the strongest about this defensive front and the pressures that they were putting on Dak Prescott. Because of that, it's really hard because it's like they haven't consistently been able to withstand a quarterback, even the most stoic of quarterbacks in the pocket. So if that's the case, I don't want them leaving kind of their areas, their guys, to go after the quarterback, because then we've just seen guys just be able to dump it down. And I'm just not, I can't trust it just yet. So I don't want to like send the house and then they get a 20-yard gain with Bo Nix just kind of being like, oh. So
yeah, and even last week against New Orleans, I mean, they blitzed at the second highest rate of the season according to Next Gen Stats. Didn't really get home. So it's one of those where even at the times when they have brought extra guys, brought extra pressure, it's not getting home the way that you would want. And Bo Nix has proven he can get the ball out quickly. But somebody on Atlanta's defense who's got a little bit of a homecoming this weekend is Justin Simmons, who had an all-pro career in Denver, was one of the best safeties in the league there, established himself with the Broncos. What are you expecting to see from him, Terrin, in his return?
I was so ready with the Bo Nix stat. Anyways. But with Justin, fortunately I haven't talked to him myself this week, so I can't say what he is saying or repeat it. Jesse Bates today did say that Justin still refers to Denver as his home. He's like considering this a homecoming essentially, which makes sense considering he was drafted by the Broncos in 2016 and was there until this season. That's a long time in one place.
Yeah.
That's more than one contract. That means a lot. They gave him his chance and they gave him multiple chances, but alas, he is here. And I went back, since I didn't talk to him this week, to his intro presser, and there was one quote that really stood out to me from that kind of speaks volumes about maybe how he feels a bit. But he said, quote, "I'm not going to talk about it much because that stuff's in the past and I'm moving forward. But I was in Denver for 8 seasons. In those 8 seasons, 5 head coaches, 6 if you include an interim coach. So a lot of turnover, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of potential in some seasons." End quote. And you're not able to rattle off all those numbers without it meaning something to you. And he says he's not going to talk about it, and then he did talk about it.
Kind of sounds like he wished he had more stability there in Denver.
Yeah, and I think it's probably still a bruise, for lack of a better term, where like now going back, maybe he's poking it, and it's probably an emotional game. I assume it's going to be an emotional game. If he says he's going home, I think that's a fair assumption. But I don't think you can let that get to your head too much. But I do think a win in Denver would mean more to him than possibly anyone else on the team.
Yeah,
especially because he chose to come to Atlanta.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a big part of the story. It's not like Matthew Judon where he gets traded to Atlanta. It's Justin Simmons was sold on this Falcons team, on this organization. He chose to be here, which I think in this context, when you're having to leave home.
It took so much for him to leave.
Right.
Yeah, and I think when you look at him and almost compare him to a player like Grady Jarrett or Jake Matthews or whatever, when you're not the quarterback or when you're not like a head coach, there's only, I think, so much impact you can have on the overall direction of a team. And so for even as good of a player as Justin Simmons was, Denver's defenses have historically been pretty good over the years. But their overall team success, after Peyton Manning left, an amazing Hall of Fame quarterback, have gone kind of in a different direction. So you understand why he still feels that way, because I think if Grady Jarrett, God forbid, were playing on another team, you would hope he still says Atlanta is home, right? For many different reasons. But he would still feel that connection, even though he maybe went somewhere else for more team success. And that is what we hope Justin Simmons has here in Atlanta, and that continues on Sunday. So, Tori, who else on the Broncos offense has your attention?
Probably Marvin Mims.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, why?
I thought, so I'll go back to March. And he was somebody who was coming up on a contract year during free agency, I believe. And he was somebody who every single time that I was thinking about moves that the Falcons could make, guys who I kind of liked looking at who were available and who I thought they could get for a reasonable price, before they got Darnell Mooney, of course, I kind of liked the way that Marvin Mims played. I thought he was somebody who hadn't necessarily reached the full potential that I believed him to have. And I think with Bo Nix as his quarterback, I do think that it's kind of opening the door more for him. And I don't know if it's just because like he has my attention because he had it in the offseason. That's probably it. But I do.
Attention is attention.
Yeah, I kind of like the way he plays. And so, but I say that from a personal standpoint, but probably like taking off like the personal hat and putting it aside, like this offensive line for the Broncos
so good.
Has been so good recently, and especially considering how how not consistent the Falcons pass rush has been. It feels like they could just kind of stand there all day and just let Bo Nix like pat the ball until kind of something materializes, because that's how good they've been.
Yeah.
And I can't watch what they've done recently without giving props to that offensive line unit. They've been really, really good and haven't really made that many mistakes.
For sure. Terrin, you're about to jump out of your skin with a stat. What's up?
Well, they've given up sacks, which is bound to happen regardless. There have been 3 games in which the offensive line hasn't allowed Bo Nix to get sacked at all. But the thing that stood out to me a lot when looking at Bo Nix stats, and I was like eager to say it, so I'm glad we found a way to loop it in, is in the first 2 games, he threw 2 interceptions in each. Since then, aka in the 8 games since then, he has only thrown 2.
Yeah.
And it's only 1 in 1 game apiece.
Yeah.
And it's just that alone shows how much he, as a rookie, grew quickly. And I was talking to Matthew Judon in the locker room today, and he's like, yeah, he's bound to make rookie mistakes, but we can't bank on that because he has shown that he is able to progress really quickly, and he is performing well, as both of you has mentioned. He also has had a long college career, so he's been playing for a minute. So he's been doing this for a while, even if he's just a rookie in the NFL.
Yep. No, you guys are spot on. And I mean, Bo Nix against Kansas City, a really good defense in its own right. He was 22 of 30, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Again, they only lost by 2 points to the Chiefs. We saw what the Broncos did to the Buccaneers earlier in the season, blew them out. Like, they've had some pretty impressive
Any NFC
wins.
South team.
Yeah, like the Broncos are no joke at all. But one thing that really stood out to me about Bo Nix in this last game, on 3rd down especially, he completed 9 of his 10 pass attempts for 6 first downs, 83 yards, and both of his touchdowns came on 3rd down. So when we talk about, again, getting off the field or staying on the field and kind of matriculating down it, that's going to be huge, is really both quarterbacks, how decisive they can be on such a critical down. So let's quickly pivot to one thing the Falcons need to do to get a win on Sunday. Tori, we'll start with you.
Score. Weird, funny, but you didn't score against the Saints. I think you have to be able to put these, it goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning. You have to be able to put the ball in the end zone if you are having these long, meticulous drives. Like, you cannot just stall after 6-7 minutes on the 3-yard line. You have to punch it in. You're not going to win this game if you aren't taking advantage of those opportunities, because, again, I do not think you're going to have very many because of how good this defense is. So that it's finishing these drives. Finish these drives, and it gives you a chance. Because, again, like, I can't look at this game and feel confident one way or the other because of the way that both teams are built right now and the way both teams are playing right now, and how I feel like, to a certain extent, it's like I just keep thinking that this is going to be like a low-scoring brawl, that it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last, whoever has the ball within the final 2 minutes of the game is going to come out on top. And if you're the Falcons and you have the ball in the final 2 minutes of the game, you got to put points on the board because if it's going to go the way that I think it will, you won't have a lot of opportunities to do that.
All right, so scoring points.
A
little bit of a hot take,
Right.
honestly.
Like, how do I top that?
Terrin, I that's kind of wild and out there. Let's see if you can bring it back to reality. What do the Falcons have to do to win?
I'm lumping two different things together and calling it win the chain game.
Okay.
Like the offense has to stay ahead of the chains as we talked about, like keep moving them and whatnot. But then when you read that third down stat, I was like, uh-oh, big yikes. The defense has to get Denver off the field if that is the case. Don't let them keep picking up first downs if you've already got them on third.
Yeah, I think both of those, like, points are going to be at a premium. Keeping possession, time of possession, I think is going to be at a premium in this one as well. For that reason, turnovers. Like, I think in this one, especially winning the turnover battle, it's simplistic. It's kind of like, I think we're all identifying the main facets of winning a football game, but that's because, to Tori's point, this is
You have to.
such an evenly contested battle on paper, right? Like,
and let's be honest, like they didn't do that against the Saints.
Yeah.
We looked at each other and we're like, if there was just a turnover right here,
But again, I
different
feel
game.
like the approach was different inherently. I kind of do think that they felt, hey, like, all we need to do is connect on kind of one of these shots. Like Bijan having that explosive touchdown run was great. If they had one more of those, they win that game. It's just they weren't able to kind of connect on enough of them. But I don't know if their approach was, let's work our way down the field in more of a intentional fashion. I kind of think they felt they could get a few haymakers against the Saints defense.
Devil's advocate, they didn't do that.
They didn't.
Right?
No,
like,
you're
so
right.
that's the thing is like, I go back to the point we were making earlier, 400 yards of total offense. It's like,
So what?
So what? You didn't win. You didn't score. You didn't finish drives. You didn't do what fundamentally you needed to do. Turnovers.
And they lost the game.
And they lost the game.
Yeah.
So
Back to the fundamentals,
it's
basic
like-
ball.
it's kind of like, okay, your approach can be one thing, but if that approach doesn't work, then it's just kind of like,
Yeah, but I think there's a difference in the approach not working one game and the approach itself being bad. Like
I'm not saying the approach was like bad.
No, right.
It didn't
I'm
work.
clarifying.
Yeah.
It's the approach in and of itself, I think, was sound when you looked at what that Saints defense was and what other teams had done against them, and still you weren't able to do that. So the execution there wasn't there. On both sides of the ball, right? So this week is going to be an execution-heavy approach because you're not really going to get, I think, any of those easy looks that you didn't get against the Saints that you thought maybe you would, right? So let's wrap up with, or actually, I guess I need to do. No, I did turnover margin. Cool. All right, let's wrap up with closest to the pin. And Tori, this is the first time you've
Welcome.
ever done
I know.
closest to the pin, so that's going to be fun.
Very
but we're going to
exciting.
start with Terrin. Terrin, you've got Justin Simmons tackles.
I did 8,
Eight
which I know is
tackles.
high. It would be a season high for
I
him.
know that is high for him.
But come on, he's going home.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be gassed up and ready to
I'd
go.
rather go big for this one. Ready to take the L.
All right, a Rocky Mountain 8.
You did not say that with any confidence at all. You're like, I'm going to say this number, but I'm not confident in it.
8.
I'm manifesting for 31.
There you go.
Not 31 tackles, 8 for 31.
It's like, all right, 31. Tori, you've got Kyle Pitts receptions.
Yeah, 4.
4 receptions.
Yeah,
Okay.
4. I feel like that's a healthy number for what we've seen from him. I do think that because you have to spread the ball out, Drake London is healthy. Darnell Mooney's good. Bijan Robinson has gone over 100 yards from scrimmage in each of the last 5 games. I feel like you're not going to get an overwhelming amount of targets to Kyle Pitts, but I could see anywhere from like 5 or 6 going his way, and I think if he can catch 3 or 4 of them, I'm going to go on the higher end. I'm going to give it to him for 4 receptions.
Ooh, all right, love it. I've got Kirk Cousins rushing yards. I went with -7.
Which is that's hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious.
And I'm counting sack total in there
I was about
as well.
to say, like, are you counting
yeah,
that?
it's so I kind of think there's 1 or 2 sacks in there, but I do think he's got like 4 rushing yards and then
And then it goes back?
a couple of sacks.
God.
Yeah. So -7. This is like the weirdest closest to the pin I think we've done so far. We've got
When am I
8
the positive
tackles.
Polly?
Right,
We've
yeah.
got 4 receptions, and then we've got -7 rushing yards. So we will see how all of
Right,
that
yeah.
shakes up.
We're just
Sunday
being
afternoon.
realistic. Like
are.
we're
Am
being. Actually, I don't know.
Tackles, 8 tackles for Justin Simmons. I mean, Yeah, it depends, I guess, on the game plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Audra Guest may get into the secondary a lot, but let's hope not.
Honestly, if Justin Simmons has 8 tackles, something's happened.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Hey, the career high for the guy going home.
Would that be his career high?
No, I meant season.
Okay.
Don't question it.
The season high.
It came out too naturally.
All right. Let's go ahead and get out of here.
might-
Thank you guys so much for listening to Falcons Final Whistle presented by Zaxby's. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the show. Spread the word. We rely on you guys to grow this channel and this feed. And be sure to catch the pregame show, which is going to go live on YouTube an hour before kickoff. And since kickoff on Sunday is at 4:05 p.m., that means our pregame show will be going up at 3:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The next time you will hear Falcons Final Whistle will be bright and early Monday morning. But until then, everybody, for Tori McElhaney and Terrin Waack, I'm Will McFadden, and we will see you then.